Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining the Justice Project. We are definitely in a new season of civic action as we push for local officials to assert a just political will. PAC joins that call for the deconstruction of systematic racism. We're in a reimaginative space where all voices are crying out from the streets. So we're looking to usher in a new social contract to frame our future with a foundation of transformational love, justice, and equity. PAC and over 100 faith tribal leaders and clergy stand together as we call for policies that end police brutality and of Martin Luther King's justice. Today we listen to understand as authentic local leaders share how moral courage can stand to demand justice reform in Santa Clara County and all of its cities. I'm Reverend Ray, the Executive Director for PAC, which is People Acting in Community Together, here in Santa Clara County and Silicon Valley. We are a multi-faith, multicultural organizers who develop leaders to speak truth to power. We demand for equal justice for all. We stand for Black Lives Matter. We stand for restorative justice, and we stand for police accountability. We push mayors, college presidents, school boards, police, and our district attorney to get on board to denounce unjust systems so that everyone gets to thrive and enjoy the same quality of life. So at this time, I'd like to welcome our wonderful cast of panelists today. We have from San Jose State, Professor Nikki. And at this time, I'd like Professor Nikki to introduce yourself, tell us about your work and what is giving you gas and fueling you in this moment.
Hi, I'm Professor Nikki Yeboah, and I'm an assistant professor in the Communication Studies Department at San Jose State. What's giving me gas and fuel in this moment? Black tea, and also a very real desire and excitement to see what the future holds for us as a Black community and for us as a larger society. We're at a moment where it's impossible to ignore what we have been saying, what we have been articulating for decades, centuries. You would have to be a full-on racist to not see that there's something wrong with the system that we're all a part of. And it's exciting is the wrong word because it's tragic too, you know, but it's a moment that has so much possibility embedded within it that I am fueled by the knowledge that the possibilities are endless. The work I do at San Jose State and what brought me to this is I do work in oral history performance, which is that I often interview members of the Black community about their stories, and then I share their stories through performance, playwriting. And a few years ago, I staged a play called The Mothers, which interviewed local, and by local I mean Bay Area women who had lost family members to police violence. And we staged that at San Jose State and then took it across the country as well. And that was my introduction to this issue.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Nikki. Welcome. And we look forward to hearing more about your storytelling. Next week, we have a young man here with us who represents that voice that refuses to be heard. So I'd like to invite Brother Jordan Covington. Tell us about yourself, what you do, and what's fueling you in this moment.
Hi, everyone. As you said, my name is Jordan Covington, and I am a local actor in the Bay Area, aspiring actor trying to go out to LA and, you know, deepen my craft. Most recently, what's been fueling me through all this is the drive that I'm seeing through everybody in our community. I feel like our voice needed to be heard long ago, and it's sad to say that it's being heard now. So I love the drive that everyone's bringing with it, and just hopping on that and being that leader that people can look to, that can hopefully, you know, exemplify to make our voice loud and heard And so that's what's driving me. And I just want to do my part and make sure that everyone else does theirs as well.
Excellent, Ashe, and welcome, Jordan, to this platform. Next, we have a wonderful local activist and individual who is really driving the community as well. And it's always good to hear multiple voices. So I'd like to introduce AnneShirley. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your organization, and what is giving you gas in this moment?
Sure. Hi, I'm AnneShirley Nyako, and what's giving me gas is the overwhelming response to oppression and the willingness to change. On my platform, I use communication, I use podcasting, I use social media as we tell our stories and connect with each other and validate our experiences. And oftentimes we can neglect the trauma that we've gone through by not putting names or not communicating what we're experiencing. And so in this very huge cultural moment, we are seeing so many people say, we are not tolerating this anymore. We are speaking, we're giving voice to our experiences, and there's a strong willingness to change. And to me, as painful as this trauma that's happening with George Floyd, with Breonna Taylor, with Toyin, it's also the resistance is what's inspiring to me. I come from a Ghanaian family, and I'm Ghanaian American. And one of the things that I am inspired about by being an American citizen is just this strong, like a desire to fight against authoritarianism and being able to exist as you are authentically. And to me, this is the moment. This is our historic moment, and you want to be on the right side of history. So that's what's giving me gas. It's time to really put words to our experiences, and you just want to be on the right side of history, right? So yeah, that the work I do predominantly is podcasting and storytelling as well online.
Excellent, AnneShirley. Thank you so much. And absolutely, we are determined to speak prophetically from a place of moral courage to be on the right side of history. I don't know about you, but I feel this is the tipping point. There's no retreat, and we're not going back. So whatever the powers that may be and the stakeholders that are in place, they better put on their seatbelt, because we're in for a ride, and we're not going to stop until justice prevails. So before I continue and we dive deeper into our time with Professor Nikki and Jordan and AnneShirley, I'd like to take a moment to pause. Today, many of our colleagues with Faith in Action and PICO are back in Louisville, Kentucky, protesting for Breonna Taylor. As you know, she was an EMT who was shot 8 times as police officers used a no-knock warrant to enter in to pursue a suspect that was already in prison. So I'd like to take a moment, and my prayer would be a silent prayer of faith, which is of love and justice for Breonna in this moment, and those who are fighting to make sure that those who unnecessarily and irresponsibly took her life are held accountable. So let's hold a moment for Breonna. Ashe, shalom, peace, assalamu alaikum to all of us. Ameen and ameen. All right, let's dive right into it. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and those who are listening and watching us live on Facebook or who are registered for our Zoom webcast. You can place your questions in the chat box for our panelists. You can place them on our Facebook Live, and we'll do our best to respond to you in kind. So my first question is for Dr. Nikki. You are your native land, your native homeland, and also AnneShirley is Ghana. And then you uprooted all the way to Canada and then to California to become a professor at San Jose State University. So my question to you is, can you talk about your feelings of fear and terror as you learn about the death of Black Americans? And as you reflect on your petition, is it driven by the desire to protect and elevate Black lives as well as Latinos and Indigenous students in the wake of the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor?
Yeah, so like you said, I left Ghana when I was 7 and lived in Canada until I actually did my PhD in Chicago, and then from there moved here. But I spent my adulthood in Canada, and I remember when I made the decision to live in the States, friends were terrified for me because of what they had seen in the news. They asked me repeatedly if this was the decision I wanted to make, had I thought it through. And you know, one of the ways in which I tried to make them and myself feel better was I said, but I'm moving to California. It's the most liberal state. I wouldn't do this if I was moving to Mississippi or if I were moving to Oklahoma. I wouldn't do that. I don't have the tools for that, but it's California. And then I get here, and I remember as soon as I accepted the job offer, it wasn't even a week later and now it bothers me that I can't remember the name of this person, but this was 2016, someone was killed by police violence in Santa Clara County just a week after I signed the papers and just a week after I'd affirmed to myself and my family that I should be safe because California is great. And so I walked into that job, and I remember I posted on Facebook, like my job announcement wasn't like, woo, I got a job. It was like, I got a job and I don't know how I feel about it. And I got here, and this was kind of like, just looming, was like this shadow over my new position that I would otherwise have been so excited about. And I was, they had just started this program, Faculty in Residence at San Jose State, which was started, a Black Scholars Floor was started for freshman students as a result of a Black student who had been terrorized by his white roommates. They had put like a bike lock around his neck. They would hang up nooses in his dorm room. It was horrible. That's how that floor started. And I was their first faculty in residence. And so when I got there, I was very political. My agenda was overtly political. It was, let's talk about violence against Black folks. And I brought in some speakers to talk specifically about police violence. And that's what gave birth to the play that I talked to you about before. After I met these women, they were mostly women, I was like, there's something about this particular perspective on this issue. This perspective of like the family members that are left behind to put the pieces back together after someone dies. These people aren't headlines, you know, they belong to somebody. They belong to a community. And what happens to that community after they're gone? And so that's how the play started. And then once I heard these narratives, the play was great, but I also felt like an added responsibility. Like, you can't hear these stories of trauma and then walk away after your play is done. Like, okay, great, you know, we did that. Thank you, it's over. And so that was 2 years ago that I staged the play, and I've been working with these women ever since. And so when this movement started about a month ago, I had to look at myself and with the knowledge I had, one of the women that I interviewed, her partner was killed by San Jose State University police near campus. I knew my college was implicated. I knew the university was implicated in these larger conversations about police violence. There were other stories and even video footage of students being beaten by San Jose State University police officers. So it wasn't happening out there, it was happening here where I was. And so that's why I started this petition, this larger petition to defund San Jose State University police on our campus.
Great. So that's, and we want to know more. Tell us more about that. We get the reason why it was started. So give us more context of where it is today and what you're looking to accomplish with your petition.
Yeah. So About 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, the Black faculty on our campus started to get together. We're only 3% of the faculty population at San Jose State. We started to get together over Zoom to talk about, what did we want our response to be? And so given my own research background, I said, hey, I think I'm interested in thinking about defunding police. If anybody's interested, here's my email address, reach out. And a group of 10 of us decided to come together and write this document all remotely. So we held a bunch of meetings, we divvied up responsibilities. Each of us were different, had a responsibility for a section. We edited each other's work. We did research with each other. It was truly collaborative. The university is always, unfortunately, it came to them in the wrong form, but they're always pushing for interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary research. And I will say, like, we had biologists, we had engineers, we would never otherwise meet or talk, this would never happen. And so this was truly a collaborative process. And then on Monday, we decided to put it out in the world. And it's now Thursday that I'm speaking with you. And so far we have over 700 signatures. And it started with one. I was the first signature, I didn't know where it would go.
And that's taking place, those are signatures of your colleagues at San Jose State, or is this citywide?
So this is citywide, so anyone can sign it. You just have to state your affiliation. So alumni, students, faculty, or just members of the San Jose city community that are interested. Because if you're in San Jose, the San Jose State University system is a part of your world, and so you have a right to sign the petition and to voice your opinion. And so, yeah. Everyone is welcome to sign. In fact, I encourage you to sign bit.ly/SJSUPD. The more signatures we have, the more seriously they take our demands.
Excellent, and thank you for sharing it. We'll circle back to that conversation and remind them. Oftentimes in the question of defunding, we talk about cities and counties and states when it comes to policing and it being as a weapon of oppression for Black people and people of color. We never stop to think about our campuses and the policing that's happening there. So thank you for that awakening and sharing of that information. And we'll circle back and talk more about it a little more. So let's go to AnneShirley. Can you speak to those often erased when protests arise? Black women and trans and those on that gender spectrum.
Sure. Police brutality isn't just a Black man's issue. It's an issue that affects all types of people, and especially Black women and Black trans women. Oftentimes, when we see headlines, we don't recognize that there is a large group of people who are subjected to police brutality who don't get recognition because of their gender identity. Recently, you may have heard of Breonna Taylor. There was also a girl named Toyin. She's also going viral right now. Black women are actively protesting. Black women are at the front lines, also yelling at police because Black children are, Black women are also part of this movement because Black lives mattering isn't just a Black man's issue, it's Black children, it's Black trans folks, it's Black women. However, it's not uncommon for our stories to get missed. And the reason why that happens often is because we're considered a minority within a minority group, if that makes sense. And we don't take our stories as seriously. So one of the things that we can do to really understand when we're talking about Black Lives Mattering is also accepting that it's not just a one issue thing. We are advocating for everyone who carries the label of Blackness, and we can't be liberated as a group if we aren't also advocating for Black trans folks and Black women as well. So that's predominantly where I stand. George Floyd is a very, very important figure in this movement. But I just hope that, like, as we are advocating for Black lives, we remember that the lives that often we ignore, like Black children and Black women, are also subjected to violence. There are children who have been shot and killed, like Tamir Rice, just playing with toys. We remember Trayvon Martin. There are Black girls who get shot and killed during these no-knock police arrests, so to speak, and they don't get a headline. And it's important for us to really, really, if we're really going to be about this, make sure that we are advocating for the girls, the trans folks, the women as well. We make up a majority of the community too.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. Let me dive a little bit deeper before I get to Jordan. Why do you think Brianna, and I think you may have mentioned it, but and Professor Nikki, you can join in as well. Why do you think Brianna did not get the headlines that George and Ahmaud Arbery received?
I strongly think it's because of gender. When we're talking about men, for example, they have a certain level of privilege, and we also see them as autonomous individuals. So when a man gets assaulted, it's really much, we give them more humanity. Whereas Black women, because they are women, there's still that added, like, we still have work to do to see women as individuals and their lives mattering beyond just being a possession, so to speak. So the reason why Breonna Taylor didn't get that much attention is because she is a woman of, she's a woman. It's because she's a woman. Had people started burning stuff down and destroying monuments and having all this visceral feedback, if Breonna died, we would have seen her murderers come to justice way sooner. I mean, when Breonna was murdered, it was like in March or maybe earlier this year, and not many people heard about it until George. And I think that just goes to speak to the fact that Black women still have work to do to be considered autonomous individuals who also matter.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing your insight. And we need to unpack that more, and maybe through your activism and storytelling, both you and Professor Nikki can help us bridge to understand what we can do more to highlight women who are just as vulnerable and subject to anti-Blackness and racism, just as your brothers. All right, Jordan, you are an actor and activist and a Black man in America. As a storyteller, you've organized Martin Day Tech-ins for students earlier this month. Share with us and talk about your story and how it has intersected with racial injustice, how it has intersected with police terror.
Yeah. Well, I mean, growing up, being an actor has always been like a dream, you know, a faint dream in the back of your head. But I had that dream in front of my head of being a basketball player growing up, being that I'd be that one person that make it to the NBA type of feel. So I was blessed being around Black people, people of my color, you know, just doing us, you know, doing how we do. And so when becoming an actor and slowly taking that role of doing that and being that person to show these stories and share these stories, I think there's nothing like it. The play specifically that made me want to be an actor was To Kill a Mockingbird, and I played as Tom Robinson. If you're not familiar with To Kill a Mockingbird, Tom Robinson got accused of sexual assault on a white lady, and it is a story about a white man's savior, Atticus Finch, but just living as the story of Tom Robinson just really made me understand, you know, Black lives are sacred, and they are taken too easily by the people that are supposed to be protecting us. I feel like acting wasn't even the reason that I started activism. I think most recently, this movement gave me the urge and the need to be that person to step up and speak out. But I think it was really in 2012 when Trayvon Martin died that made me realize, like, oh, these people that are dying are me. Like, at first I was just like, oh, wrong person, wrong time. When I was growing up, I'm just like, oh, another Black man died. But when I saw that it was someone like me, when I was 14, seeing a 17-year-old die on TV, I mean, it touched me in a different way. And it made me understand that, like, this shouldn't be happening. Like, these conversations that I'm having with my parents growing up, talking about how, like, I should be more aware of the people around me and I should be, you know, nicer to people. I just thought that's something that's what kids would know, you know, when you grow up. That's just what kids should do. So when I finally realized that they're doing this because of the color of my skin, I just knew that change needed to happen. And so as an actor, as a and trying to be in more movies and divulge in my art and be more, but eventually I want to be that person that people can look forward to when they're talking about Black activism, you know, to be the Spike Lee, be a Jamie Foxx. And so, like, I write, I perform, I want to do more for the Black community. And growing up in this area, specifically San Jose, I've been blessed. I've been blessed with a great family who's taking care of me, a strong Black family, a strong Black grandmother. Going into high school, Piedmont Hills, I had a Black principal who took care of me, extra care, and helped me start my college career. So I've been blessed with having these strong Black people around me. And that's really, you know, affected me for when I'm in instances with policing. Like, I've never got a gun in my face, or I've never got handcuffed, put in the back of a cruiser. I've been detained. I've been pulled over randomly. I've been walked up to my car in front of my own house by policemen asking what I'm doing here. And I understand where that's coming from, where that bias, where that hatred is to Black skin. So I just want to make sure that people truly understand. That's what I would be using my platform for, to making people aware, because you can't ask for change if you don't truly understand what they want change for, you know?
Excellent, Jordan. I mean, thank you for your voice. I mean, you could be my son. I know I look like maybe I'm in my 20s, but the reality is the conversations that I would have with my son who's 24, the conversations that I would have with you. Back in the day, and Professor Nikki, you didn't grow up here, but our grandmother and mother and our parents used to say, be home before the street light comes on. Mm-hmm. So we thought perhaps they were just being mean, right? Because we couldn't have any fun. You just don't want me to have any fun. But it was more about protection. It was a language that they could not articulate to say that when the sun goes down, right, it is never been traditionally a safe person for a Black person living in America, male or female, historically, because of white supremacy, racism, and bigotry, and because of anti-Blackness and racism. So we have to tell the stories. Keep your hand on the steering wheel, have your insurance and your license above your head, make no subtle movements, don't talk back. It's a bad commentary, because what we're asking you to do is give up a sense of dignity. But giving up a sense of dignity helps a young brother like Jordan stay alive. But this is why we say we're not going back, we're not turning back, no retreat, because we're going to demand justice and equality. And those days of having to dumb down just to stay alive is over, because we're calling for great accountability. Jordan, I'm going to ask you another question. This is relational to your ideas about love and transformation and justice. What does that mean for you when you think about moments when you feel safe and valued? So we're talking about your safety and your value. So share what love and transformation and justice means to you when you think about moments when you feel safe and valued.
I think love is when you truly see somebody more besides the color of their skin. You see them as a person. You see them as a human being. You know, I think when I feel safe and valued by my peers, they don't see me as just their token Black friend, their you know, the one cool dude, or, you know, whatever. They see me as a human being, and they respect me on another level. Transformation and justice, especially in this time to feel safe and valued in this environment right now, I think that we need to feel a sense of communication with the people that are protecting us. If I want to feel justice for these people that are dying, I got to make sure that I know the people that are on the streets protecting me. I have to make sure I know the people that are putting all these people in power. I need to make sure that there's a sense of communication, that there will be no more miscommunication, like, oh, I thought this was the culprit type of thing, self-defense. I need to make sure that we're all on the same page. And so until I see that, I don't think love is truly there yet. That's how I feel.
Excellent, Jordan. Thank you so much for sharing. Again, we're listening at PAC. We listen to the stories of the people. And AnneShirley, did you want to add something into that? Go ahead. I see you. Go ahead. Jump right in.
So I love that you said, in order for and safe, there's a level of protection that you need to have to feel that security. And I just want to add that Black women and Black trans folks want to have that same security and protection from Black men. And sometimes in these movements, we get silenced when we're talking about our experience. Like, oftentimes, lots of the dialogue that I've been seeing online is like, this isn't the time for this. We're focusing on this Black man right now. And Black women and Black trans folks, in order for us to feel love and secure, we need Black men as well to be willing to be our protectors. Because I've also seen lots of Black men go against Black women within these movements and silence them or commit even sexual harm towards them. So I guess my bigger point is, as much as we are demanding the outside to defund and change the way they communicate with the larger community, I think it's also a great time for us to reflect within our community how we may be perpetuating those same systems of oppression to smaller groups. But at the end of the day, I love what you're saying. I love I love the way you articulated or you spoke about how important it is to feel safe in order to feel loved, because I agree with that wholeheartedly. Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, AnneShirley. Hey, Jordan, did you have anything you wanted to respond to in relationship to that?
Yeah, I would just to say I totally agree. I think we have to be fully aware of all parts. And you're right. It seems that the man is the story that they always go with. And it's just like, it shouldn't be that way anymore. Like you said, all parts of Black needs to be talked about. Trans, gay, lesbian. It needs to be said and it needs to be heard, because awareness is the key for change. If you don't really understand, then I don't think change.
Yes.
Great dialogue, and thank you. Professor Nikki, before I ask you your next question, did you want to respond to that wonderful exchange in relationship
Yeah, I think it was beautiful. I think it's beautiful that you're raising these issues, because I think it's a question of asking ourselves, what is the world we want to make after? We're dismantling right now. What are we building? And if we're building a world that is just a reproduction of what was handed down to us, but with maybe different leaders that look more like us, then what is this world?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need to envision more than that. And I think when AnneShirley brings up, you know, the trans community, women and their underrepresentation, the violence that's committed against their bodies, if we continue to ignore that, we will reproduce that. That is for sure. And so it's very important that when we're thinking about what Black love looks like, what utopia looks like, we need to be inclusive of those dynamics. Otherwise, we might not be any better than our oppressor.
That's a great point, Professor Nikki. I'm really big. Complicit is not just from our white brothers and sisters, our non-Black brothers and sisters, but it is also within our own Black community. Our own Black biases, our own Black silences, our own Black being complicit. We can no longer, and I agree, I just don't want a new creative, a new invention of something that's old. There needs to be a complete, when we talk about defunding, of course, we're not talking about eliminating the police, but we're talking about how do we change the systemic processes that have been tools of oppression, right? And the same thing, we must be mindful when it comes to men and women and our brothers and sisters who are a part of the LGBT community, because one hate propagated against one is the hate administered to all. So it's this whole recreating and not being satisfied with just some newness or an idea of putting a blanket on an old, a new patch on an old jacket. No, to hell with that. We want something completely new, right? Yeah. All right, great dialogue. Okay, Professor Nikki, this question is for you, and it's relational to your students. How do you teach your students at San Jose State to share stories and oral histories to energize social justice and freedom from oppression?
Yeah, that is something that I still am actively doing and renegotiating and changing with every time I teach this class. So typically I teach a class a semester where students go out and interview a community and then tell their stories. Just this past semester, we're looking at student homelessness. And so students did interviews with San Jose State students that were homeless, as well as staff members that whose job it is to ensure their safety, et cetera. And so we told that narrative. And I've also taught classes where students went out into the community beyond San Jose State and dealt with homelessness or police. We talked about the incarceration system. And you know, what's really interesting is that I think people are much more comfortable reading about it or witnessing it from afar than they are getting messy, you know, getting in there and seeing what they could do. So there's some coded language around feeling uncomfortable, you know. Of course you're gonna feel uncomfortable. If you don't feel uncomfortable, then you haven't done anything, you know. If this is not shaking you up in some way, then this is not a productive exercise. But people don't like that. People don't like to be uncomfortable. People don't like discomfort. So in answering your question, I always push them to their comfort levels, you know. I have them reflect a lot before we go out in the field. I have them reflect a lot on their own identities and how that will impact and influence how they view or understand or represent the people they're interviewing. So if you are a white man interviewing a Black woman that's just come out of jail, you need to first reflect on your own identity before I let you interview that woman. Because otherwise you might be, you know, furthering her trauma, to be honest. And I think there's a way in which people feel like there's an inherent good in just listening to somebody's story. I think that's the white liberal reflex, you know, like I listened and like that's where it ends and like they feel good about themselves. But if you are not listening and self-examining, it's not going anywhere. If you are not looking at the way you're implicated, this is not a Black issue. Police violence is not an issue that is a Black issue. It is our society. It is a societal and systemic issue. And even if it's not happening to people that look like you, guess what? You live in a society where this is happening. So it is also your problem. And so I need people to understand their personal stake in stories that don't necessarily reflect their own experiences. So a lot of the work I do is not just teaching them how to interview, but it's in teaching them how to deconstruct their own place in the world before engaging with other perspectives.
Excellent. Storytelling has been historically a way for the African and the Black and American to pass along history. Mm-hmm. Storytelling, listening right now is very important because it tells the stories of the pain that's happening in the community. And it's uncomfortable, it's messy, it's not fun. And to your point, Dr. Nikki, if I'm talking to someone, if you feel comfortable or if you don't feel uncomfortable, we're not having the right conversation. Right now, we have to be able to call a duck and a spade a spade. And if white supremacy, bigotry, an issue, and anti-Blackness and racism is the issue, we must dig into that without fear. So your ability to teach your students how to tell the story unabridged is a way that those who have not heard can listen. And then the last point of just listening, you need to be transformed by that and not only be changed and more aware, but move that into action. Exactly. Because it's not enough to say, I'm anti-racist. I'm non-racist. I want you to move from being non-racist, which means you recognize it, to being anti-racism, which means you're in the fight. Yeah, right? You are on the front line. You're in the offices of the elected saying, hey, we're not going to settle for this anymore. Be it at the POA, no, you need to change your practices because we don't want any more racist cops on the beat. Not only do we pay their salaries, but we pay them to protect us. So they're going to have to make some adjustments. So that's a part of our storytelling. That's a part of our demand.
And I like what you said about storytelling, because I do want to stress that I didn't come to performance just like by accident because I liked it. I think it's political. Like our bills represented in stories is a political act. It's not just fun. I think for a lot of the Black community, you know, being able to tell their stories is being listened to is a political act. Like deep listening, deeply engaged. And also we don't always have access to the ivory tower, right? We don't have access to the literature. There's a lot of literature being produced about us that's not by us, right? So storytelling is this space that feels more egalitarian to me. And especially when you tell those stories back to the communities, that's also, for me, deeply political, because I could take these stories like all the other interviewers from the academy, the white academy, before, you know, a generation of Black scholars came in, they would extract these stories from Black communities, then they'd write something about it, and it would remain in the ivory tower and never returning to the communities. And there's something about hearing a story and then telling it back. And so having the community members see how they're represented, who's representing them, what is being said about them. I think that's deeply political. And it means more to me than writing another article that my community might never read, you know? So that's why I choose storytelling.
It's a beautiful way, and it's a beautiful art. AnneShirley, how have you used your gift of artistry and storytelling to promote this movement that we're in?
I am radically authentic in my storytelling, and I use, so Twitter, Facebook, social media, it's kind of amazing because anyone has access to it. And you don't have to have like a degree to really get like what's going on authentically. And so Facebook is this kind of flat, this platform, an egalitarian platform where all you have to do is log in and then you get to see what's actually happening. And so when I'm on Facebook, I'm very mindful of my audience isn't just the people that I'm directly talking to. I tell stories about gender bias. I tell stories about dating. I tell stories about relational love and protests. I tell stories about work because underlying this, we are talking about how systemic racism is everywhere, right? And we're talking about how in my daily lived experience, I'm confronted with gender and sex and gender bias and race bias. And I'm aware that my audience, who predominantly are women, I'm not just talking to them. I'm talking to our white partners. I'm talking to coworkers. Everyone has access to this, and it's very direct. Also, in my podcast, I use entertainment. Like I kind of like make fun of certain like situational things to draw you in and help you self-examine about, oh wait, do I do that when I'm engaging with a Black woman on the internet? Am I replicating systemic racism? Oh, excuse me. Am I replicating systemic racism? Am I replicating colorism when I'm on Tinder and I'm swiping left on Black women, right? And all this to say, when we use these platforms like Twitter, like Facebook, to talk about our lived experiences in real time, it's so raw and authentic, and it's really relatable that in a way that like reading about it in a book sometimes is not. And when I'm in your face trying to entertain you, but then I'm also making you question like, wait, your own behavior in the process, I think that's effective storytelling. I think I did my job. I think if you feel triggered, that's a word that goes on a lot, that means you might be complicit in something that you need to self-examine. And that's the reason why I'm telling my story so transparently, so authentically. I think that's key.
It's right in front of us. We can't avoid it. It's real time. It's very good. And thank you for sharing. Jordan, in your organizing, your tech ends, the streets are talking. Young folks are talking. Share some of the stories that you're hearing.
Man, what we talk about is, especially in my group, that we specifically try to form these events to have these teach-ins just to help people understand. We talk about the sources of it all, the sources of all this this corruption that we're having, this systemic racism that we're having. We're talking about defunding the police, you know, and how we try to find ways to combat people that try to say that that's a bad idea. Defunding police is not the idea of saying that we don't need protection anymore. It's the idea of saying that we could use this money that we are giving to these people who are poorly protecting us. Not all of them, you know, the bad ones, the racist ones. We are saying that this money that they're using needs to go to the people that are saying or you think are the problem, the people that are creating these crimes, these people that have low budget because you choose to give them low budget. You know, there's people that are struggling because you forced them to be in this bad neighborhood. It's like, so we want to give back to them. And then from there, we won't need to see all this protection anymore because we will be all in the same boat that you have put your white parts, you know, on top. And so that's what we've been talking about. We're talking about the people that are dying, that are not getting their name out there, like George Floyd, Breonna. These are stories that are on TV in countries, cities, and states that are dying, that are not even being told on TV. I mean, those are the people that you guys need to understand that this is not just happening now and then. This is happening almost every day, every week. And it's sickening. It's tiring.
Right on. The streets are talking. The young folks are talking. They're demanding change. So, Jordan, I want you to continue to promote and encourage you to have those streets talking and make sure that your voices are being heard because it's your time now. So I want to try to wrap things up. I really thank you for your time. We've had great discussion. So I want to end with asking each one of you to share your ideas. The thought of what does freedom look like to you? What is your utopia? Our minds and our health have been depressed because of the damage of racial injustice. How do you find release, hope, and spiritual freedom? So it's a big question. So I could surmise it by saying, how do you get to Kendrick Lamar's "We're Gonna Be All Right" stage? So I'll start with AnneShirley. How do we get to this place of freedom and knowing that it's going to be all right?
This is a great question, and I think about this a lot. And one of the ways we get there, first and foremost, is by practicing empathy and being really open to allowing all types of people to exist as they are without having to minimize who they are to make someone else uncomfortable or comfortable. I want to see a world where who I am autonomously is celebrated and not tolerated. And you as well can be as autonomous and authentic as you are, and we don't need to change in order to remain attached to a system that ultimately doesn't serve us. So what that looks like is healthy love between friends and partners, being able to feel comfortable in expressing how you feel and not being demonized for that. And when there are problems and we need to fix those problems, we don't use the power of force to kind of correct, but we try to work and find better ways to meet the needs of that individual. Because that's what I see. I see a transformation of the way we communicate with each other, the way we communicate with power, and ultimately not suppressing each other's authentic expression. I think once we get to a place where I'm okay with the fact that you are you and I am me, we are moving in the direction of being all right.
Right on. Thank you, AnneShirley. And tell the people, how can we find you? How can we follow you? How can we listen to your podcast?
Sure. Okay, so I'm on Spotify. I'm iTunes. Podcast is called Unfriendly Black Hottie. And we don't just talk about dating, we get into all types of storytelling, from mental health to work, all of it. We're discussing it through a Black woman's millennial eyes. And then also join the conversation on Facebook. You can find me at AnneShirley Anomaly. And yeah, that's join in, and that's where you can find me on Facebook, iTunes, and Spotify.
Excellent. Thank you, AnneShirley. Keep telling your story, keep being that face of positivity and demanding that the woman's voice always be heard, and women's rights from a Black perspective is never in the shadow of anyone.
Thank you.
All right, Jordan, you're very welcome. Jordan, how do we get to this Kendrick Lamar? Everything is going to be all right. What are your young folks saying? What do you need?
What we need is understanding and communication between all of us. Once we can all understand that we are a human race, not different people, and we can walk out feeling free of being killed, of being hated upon by other people. Once everyone truly understands that and truly loves each other in a way that is more than just, oh, I finally know this person, but I can be like, oh, I can get to know this person. I could see myself being with this person. I think that is the way that we need to go. No more fear. There should be no more fear of being who you are. It should be a full acceptance of who you are, and that should be like AnneShirley said, be celebrated through everybody. I think once we can all do that to anybody, I think we're in the right place.
Right on, Jordan. Thank you. Hey, I just want to be me. I don't want to code switch.
No?
Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything but be authentically Reverend Ray.
Right.
Thank you for sharing, Jordan.
Yeah.
And Jordan, how do we find you? How do we follow you? How do we stay engaged with your protests, your organized sit-ins that you have going on, check-ins? How do we find you? How do we follow you?
Totally. You can follow me on Facebook, on Instagram. Facebook is Jordan Covington. Instagram is Jordan Cov. And I keep you updated with everything that we have planned. We have another idea, potential sit-in, potential film coming up. And I'm working on a musical about police brutality. So, I got some work coming in. So just follow me on one of those two, and you'll be there.
And keep me in touch and plugged in, Jordan, and let me know how I can pump you, lift you up, and do whatever I can to support the work that you're doing for the young folks. So thank you.
Thank
Professor Nikki, how do we get to this? Everything is going to be all right. What is your utopia? Share with us your thoughts and your work and how and ways that we can get there.
Yeah, I feel like I have two visions of utopia. There's utopia in the short term and utopia in the long term. In the short term, it just means justice. It means a functioning and truly democratic system. And I think history has shown that when systems fall into place, people will fall into place. When they know that their actions will be met against a system that will penalize, they will fall into place. And so what I want right now is just a just system. But a real utopia should not be activated by fear of penalization, right? A real utopia, and this is a long term that I can't even, you know, envision fully because I'm so in the here and the now. But in the long term, I want there to be this world where, you know, people always have this like colorblind notion of what utopia is, you know, where like everyone, like no one is gonna look at your skin color and we're all just gonna be, and I'm okay with difference. I need you to be okay with difference. You know, like utopia for me is I can be different from you and you're gonna love me anyway, as opposed to be like, we're all the human race. Like, I don't care. You love dogs, you know? Like, they're not human race. They're not part of the human race, but they're still loved. Right. That's what I want within the human race as well. And I want a world in which capital is not our driving motivator. Like this, I think there's a fear of scarcity that drives a lot of like racism and sexism and whatever. There's just this idea, like the pool of resources we have in this world is so limited that we have to keep the immigrants out. We can't let women into the job force. We can't, you know what I mean? Like we can't allow Black people to obtain more capital. We have things are so scarce. And I just want a model of this world where scarcity and the capitalist drive is not what is at the heart of our every action and our every inaction. Right. And so that to me is a utopia that I've yet to see materialize, but you know, I hope.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we all share that. Hey, just love me for me, baby. Just love me for me. So, Professor Nikki, how can we follow you? How can we learn more about the petition to defund the police at San Jose State? Tell us how to get there.
Yeah, so there's a Facebook page for it. It's called Defund-SJSU PD. And also bit.ly/SJSU PD. That's where the petition can be found. I have a website, and so does my play, The Mothers. It's called the website is www.themothersplay.com. I really encourage you to go on that site and to sign up for our emails because the play will be staged over Zoom next month. And I would love there to be, you know, as huge of an attendance as possible because I want to celebrate these women that were brave enough to share their stories with us. So there's that, and then NikkiYeboah.com is my professional website as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. Brother Jordan, Sister AnneShirley, and Professor Nikki, thank you so much for sharing this moment in space. Artistry, storytelling, listening is what we've received today. The streets are talking, stories are telling, and people are in action to make sure that in this environment, we are demanding justice. There's no retreat. We're not turning back. So thank you for sharing your voices as leaders within the community who are actually engaged and your feet are on the pavement, marching towards justice. So I want to thank you so much for joining us during the Justice Project. Thank you everyone who joined us on Zoom and our Facebook Live page at PAC. Last week, I forgot to mention our Faith Leaders March that happened last Saturday, but I want to thank all of you who participated in the Faith Leaders March, which was in the context and theme of Martin Luther King's letter from the Birmingham jail. So a lot of thanks to ALF, the clergy cohort with ALF, with Jennifer and Father John Pettigo and Pastor Rabbi Dana and Pastor Sammy and all the others that put in great work, Pastor Brian, all of the great clergies who saw it fit to call to account repentance of one of America's greatest sin, the first sin being the loss and slaughter of our indigenous, and the second being that of enslaving the Black being and human being. So thank you for joining us for the march. I want to remind you that and invite you to save the date that the beloved community will be having a public action on Sunday the 19th. It's tentative. We're going to be having it with the mayor. The mayor is gracious. We have some demands, and there's some things that he's doing on his own and things that he's doing that have been influenced by the beloved community, our PAC team. So save that date because we want everyone to come out, and I'll be saying more about it leading up to the date. This is an action around the IPA, the POA, and some defunding type of discussions. And then as a reminder, we want everyone to go to our PAC page and get information regarding census. If you're listening I want you to at least share with 10 people to make sure, ask them directly, have they completed their census? Because the census is important. It's going to be very important heading into 2021. Don't forget to vote. Voting is critical. Let's not worry about California and the national election. Let's focus on our local electives, to hold them accountable, that they have the moral courage to do the right thing relational to justice and equity. And then also, we want you to join us next Tuesday at 4 p.m. as we announce our PAC honorees. This is our 35th year PAC as an organization of passing policies relational to equity and justice. So next Wednesday, we're going to be, next Tuesday at 4 p.m., we're going to be announcing our honorees. So we want you to come out and participate. Go to our Facebook page and find out all the information that's coming up. So thank you again. We'll be back with you next Thursday, the Justice Project, as we continue to reimagine justice, as we continue to push and demand change so that just and equitable Santa Clara County for all of those who live here. So thanks again, my panelists, and we are appreciative for you, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.